This is the newest episode of the PEO Speedwagon Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Shapiro, and I'm super excited today to introduce you to our new guest. This is somebody that has been in and around PEOMG, our organization, in a number of different ways. We've been taken by her in countless ways. And it just, as we were talking, it became really a very natural fit for her to come on the podcast today because I think she has really powerful things to share around leadership development, organizational development, how to lead strategy across organizations through the power of people. I'm really excited to welcome our guest, Heather Applegate, the founder of an organization called PivotX. So welcome, Heather.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
I know it's been a long time. It's
It has.
it's like it was kind of one of those things. It's like, well, of course she should come on the podcast. Why didn't we think of this sooner?
Yeah, I love it. We're complementary to each other and kind of move in the same sphere. So it's always a good conversation. So
Yeah,
now we just get to have it in a way we can listen to it again.
right. Exactly. We just do it over and over again.
Over and over.
Yeah. So, where are you? Tell us like a little bit about you, where you sit today. What are you? A little bit of Heather's story.
Yeah. I sit in Northwest Arkansas, so I'm here in Walmart country as well as another of other big companies and industries here. But yeah, you know us for the University of Arkansas, for Walmart, for Tyson. That's kind of where I sit here in Fayetteville. And as you mentioned, I have a company called PivotX, and so I do leadership development, strategic planning, and advising, and really work with a lot of small and medium-sized businesses in some deep and fun ways.
That's really great. And so when I hear about somebody's organization, like the two places I instantly go to is tell me like more about what it is you do, but also tell me about the brand. So we're going to start with the brand.
Mm.
Like why PivotX? What
Great.
does it mean? What is
Yeah.
it?
Yeah. I love this question because I love branding and it was so much fun to think of it in the first place. Okay, so there are three components to the brand. There's pivot, there's X, and then there's a hummingbird in the logo. And pivot I put in place just because, we have to take a lot of shifts through our lives, through our careers, through our businesses, and we just have to stay nimble and stay flexible if we're going to succeed. And that's been true in my personal life as well as business. So it just felt like it's integral to the whole thing. X is, it's the 24th letter of the alphabet. And so kind of thinking of the perspective of there might be many, many, many shifts that we have to make along this journey, many pivots. And, I don't know if 24 is the number or something else, but, like you exhaust the alphabet. And sometimes it feels like, wow, we're making another change. And it's just endless because we continue to grow, we continue to turn and shift and make change. And the hummingbird is the only bird that can pivot in midair. And just so nimble in the way that it moves and graceful and beautiful and fast and, open to change. And so that's how it all came together. PivotX.
That's really cool. And so on your website, you talk about the power of the pivot. I noticed that is,
Yeah.
what is that? And like what does PivotX do?
Yeah. Okay. So leadership development is one core offering, strategic planning, and then strategic advising. And so the power of the pivot is really just the ability to make change, to do things a little bit differently. And so sometimes that's thinking, if we're going to go from a leadership perspective, sometimes that's thinking about the way that you process, the way that you communicate with others, the way that you approach problems, the way that you make decisions, we get to go deep into some objective data to understand how we work and how the way we work affects other people. And once we get to have that bit of insight, then we get to make change off of it that's going to lead us to more influence and stronger decision making, better teams, and more productivity. And so the power of the pivot in that case is, what do you take from that insight? And can you have the courage to make change in the way that you work with the world? When you think about strategic planning, that's making change that's going to affect your whole organization. And maybe it's, setting a plan for the year. Maybe it's following up. How do we follow up in the year to make sure that those plans come to fruition? And then strategic advising, gosh, that just goes anywhere. And in that piece of the business, that's really thought partnership. And so coming alongside executives as they are alone in the foxhole, so to speak. And there are some things that you can't take to the whole company, you can't take to the board, and you need to decide in that foxhole. And so strategic advisory really gives a safe space to make those executive level decisions and get them to a place where you're comfortable and secure with the thought as you go forward. So, yeah.
That's really interesting. I mean, it's interesting on many levels. One that immediately jumped in my mind as you were talking was you talk to so many entrepreneurs like we do in space, whether it's just SMB in general or it's SMB adjacent to a conversation with PEO or HR outsourcing or something like that, that naturally something everybody reflects back on is like when we made this pivot, we made a big, we really started to grow or we started to do something better or, is a pivot like an inevitable concept in a business? Like you sit down, we did here, I'm sure you did, like with a business plan and like, this is how it's going to go. And then I remember for us, probably within 2-3 months, we made a pivot that has been significant that we've stuck with. Like it's been essential to our success. And you go like, oh yeah, we did a pivot. Like it happened. It was almost like a rite of passage to a degree. Like, is that just inevitable, and why? Like, where does that come from?
Yeah. I think, as smart as we may be and as experienced as we may be, we come into a business or a game thinking that we understand all the rules or thinking we can predict the outcome, and we just can't. And so, yeah, it is inevitable that we're going to face something that we didn't expect, and we're going to have to make a change. And sometimes that change is, like easy enough. We can see it and we're like, okay. But sometimes it's more delicate and we have to be more deliberate in how we think about that change, and the inputs that we take into consideration when making that change.
Yeah. And so when you talk about pivots, that actually naturally extends to strategic planning. A pivot is a byproduct of that, but also leadership development. Leadership development to me is such an important thing, albeit it gets thrown around like really vaguely as to what it is. So I'm curious, like, what is your definition or concept behind leadership development?
That's a really great question because you're right, big, broad term. When I think of leadership development, I think the core of it is influence. How are you able to hold influence on your team, with your clients, with the broader world? And, we go through life getting really fine-tuning these patterns and habits and how we operate. And sometimes they really backfire on us and we don't realize that they are, or we don't realize why they are. And so leadership development is understanding what's keeping me from having my full influence in these different situations, and how can I make that pivot to fine tune it and be more effective.
Yeah. So obviously the concept is elevating what you can do so you can do more for people, serve people, whatever your particular vein is. Like, does something that comes out of leadership development is you find that that person can't be developed? Like, is that a common byproduct of leadership development behaviors? Is that, hey, we just found out like we've hit, Peter principle. This is it. This is the best this guy, gal can get to.
I don't think that we ever get to a point where we say this is the limit of what someone can do, but we do find out that making change is going to take a lot more energy for some than others. And so, what's been interesting to see through some of these analyses is that, we have leaders who are in, top senior leadership, and you can see their data and you say, oh, absolutely, I can see why they're there. This is effortless for them. This is good. They're gifted in this area and that, and they have social presence and they have, empathy, and they have dominance. Like they're able to assert their voice and get their point across. They're visionary, whatever. And we see other people that are in that exact same position in senior leadership, and their assessment scores are much lower. And that doesn't mean that they can't do it, because they can, and they are doing it. It just means that they're exerting a little more energy to have the same effect. And so I think the question comes down to, do you want to exert that energy to get the same output? And yeah, some people do, some people don't.
It's an interesting way of thinking about it, because I've had probably a limiting belief in work. At times I've had many leaders like underneath me that have been leading teams, and
Mm.
either out of frustration or just anecdata. Like, I kind of know it's just not going to work, drawing on some very specific experience, but at the end of the day,
Mm-hmm.
it's anecdata. Um, Said this person just can't do this. But what I'm
Yeah.
hearing you say is perhaps it does feel that way because the
Yeah.
effort they're putting is getting this, and their effort to go perform like this individual or that organization, it's just going to require a lot more effort on their point or on their part. And therefore,
Mm-hmm.
like, it's not that they can't get there, it's just not as efficient or
Yeah.
effective at same levels.
Yeah. And as I mentioned before, like sometimes they don't have the insight to understand that this piece of their makeup is driving a certain result. And so whenever we can look at the data and say, like, hey, you know, you don't care a lot about making a good impression on others in the room. And so you're saying out loud things that are very abrasive, and you don't care. Okay.
Wait,
I wouldn't use those
are
words.
you reading directly off mine that
Oh,
you
no.
is that are you revealing my results before I actually get them?
No, 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 no. No, but like, let's take that as
I
an
feel like you were
example.
staring right at me. I guess maybe that's
I,
because I'm the only
I,
other person.
well,
Yeah.
the benefit. Yeah. So we could say, this is an area and it's affecting you. The other part of this data is we're taking 360 feedback. So we're hearing from coworkers and supervisors and subordinates how it's all working out. And so we get the benefit of saying, this person is abrasive and I don't like taking direction from them, or it's really frustrating in a meeting when they are blah, blah, blah. It's helpful when people can be candid and the feedback does not get back to the participant. So in verbatim form. Anyway, my point is, we're able to say, hey, this is holding you back for your real influence. And if you do want to keep growing in this company, if you do want to be in line for succession at some point, this is something that has to change. And so then it is up to that person to decide, A, I want to, and B, I'm willing to. And if they can't do either one of those, then yeah, I mean, like maybe the perception is that they can't change. But I think it's really like maybe this just isn't suited for them. Like maybe they're not willing to take the step, to do what's necessary and lead this company.
Yeah.
That happens.
What's curious, and I've experienced this having worked with leaders, also leaders above me,
Mm.
through these assessments, through this data that you're
Hmm.
referencing, and the assessments where it's generated. I've also seen someone who has taken a DISC or a Myers-Briggs or just something
Yeah.
and reference that's who they are, but that was also 10 years ago. And
Mm.
they almost wear it like a badge of honor. Like, I'm a super high D, or I'm, an E or I or whatever. How long is that data accurate for? Like, how long, I mean, with the way that people change, environment
Hmm.
changes, AI now, and like tech, like everything we do is so different than it was 10 years ago. But
Hmm.
still I hear people like cite tests or assessments like this from, a decade ago.
Yeah. I don't know what Myers-Briggs would say or
Mhm.
the DISC folks would say, but I know from the battery of assessments that I use, the
Mhm.
general rule is about 5 years. And a lot can change. I mean, some of it is your, more looking at your wiring. Some of it is more your behavioral tendencies and patterns and preferences. And so, but also like we're doing this engagement, leadership development in order to make change, in order to develop and grow and become better leaders. So from that perspective, like we should probably see a little bit of change. If we're beyond 5 years, we should see a little bit of shift here and there. Um, and especially in that 360 feedback, we should see a lot. Even if it feels like it's still taking energy, we should see that we're growing in those areas. But back to your question, about 5 years is a good frame.
Because you're right, there should be change. If you took an assessment to enhance your leadership, like maybe you didn't. Maybe you took it because your company was providing it and you're like, I'm just curious who I am and I'm not really looking to change, then that's not really development anyway. But if you were something on a you know, quadrant, this is where you are. There should be some migration change or you're defeating the whole purpose of even assessing where you are. Because no one is where they want to be, at least at any early point in time in their career.
Yeah, and especially to those behavioral assessments when, think of the ones where you're ask or answering, if you were in situation A, would you do option X, Y, or Z? It's a behavioral question. And I was just talking to someone today where they were like, oh yeah, I do understand that I scored that way because it has been a journey to learn how to interact in that way. Let me give you maybe more context. This person is direct by nature, a very direct communicator. But they have learned in this environment that they need to have a little more diplomacy in how they communicate with others. They need to soften it. They knew that they were coming across as a little bit abrasive or maybe not as much of a team player. And so they said, gosh, this feedback is really interesting because I know my natural state is to be much more direct, but I've done a lot of work to be much more cautious. And so that was coming through in the data. So that's kind of a fun nugget.
Yeah. So that one's not me. Okay, cool. So we're backing into results. So for the listeners, we've recently gone through some of these assessments, but we haven't gotten our results yet. So I'm very eager to get them because I'm trying to figure out the avatar that Heather's referring to, if that happens to be me.
It's not you. It's actually many different people.
I'm sure it's a lot of people. The assessments are interesting too. Like sometimes I think like they're trying to trick you to see if you're consistent. Like they'll ask you the same question slightly different, like 6 or 7 times. You're like, and I don't, this is honest sharing. Like I'm very much an introverted person, and I think people don't think that, and I can see why. Like, but I very much am. So like I remember one I've taken recently. I'm like, there was a question like, yeah, that is right. But like, it's almost like it's double checking me to see if I'm sure if I believe this. Is that part of it? Like, do we trick ourselves in the way we interpret our personalities?
Yeah, I think we can trick ourselves, and we can also think about what do we want the test to say about us? How do we want to show up? And so some of these behavioral assessments are like not the ones I use, but some of the other ones are a little bit easy to pull the trigger on and say like, no, I want to be seen as extroverted, so I'm going to check the extroverted box. And that's really not helpful to anyone. But yeah, you have to have some validating questions that are going to kind of throw you off the scent a little bit.
Right. Because at the end of the day, yes, if you're doing this as a check the box activity and not really care, like you're gonna, it's like when my girls, they used to, when they were younger, they would do those like little surveys to figure out which Marvel character they were, and they'd answer questions a certain way so they would get Spider-Man or
heck yes,
or Black Widow, and so. I imagine there is some percentage of people who do these things with no real intent to figure out who they are and where they could go with it.
Yeah, every cosmopolitan quiz I ever took. Yes, I totally did that. Yeah.
Right. Yes. I pulled out the thing in the middle.
Yeah, but I think like, okay, maybe this is the last thing I'll say on these personality things. There's a difference between extroversion and introversion, which actually I don't pay much attention to, and sociability and how you process things. You may be someone who is less outgoing in a room, or maybe has less confidence in a crowd. This is not you again, okay? But this person...
No, I know that. You're just getting into it. Yeah.
But you might want to externally process in order to get to your next level of decision making. Like you might need that verbal feedback of others to say, are we on the right track, rather than just figuring it out in your own brain before you then come into a group. So I think there are a lot of different things that come into what extroversion is and what introversion is, and saying extrovert versus introvert and some of these assessments sometimes like just oversimplifies in a way that it doesn't give someone clarity. It's to what they can work on.
Yeah. I see that too. You're right. I mean, I not jokingly because it's accurate, but label myself an introvert, that it's a broad brush. Like
Yeah, yeah.
it doesn't really capture everything. Like,
Mm-hmm.
um, for different reasons, I have to be very social, and I want to be.
Yeah,
But it took a long time to figure out like why that is. Like in it was,
yeah.
for me, and it was through like things like this and
Mm-hmm.
um understand these concepts, which is a good segue because on your website, like
Yeah.
read some of the testimonials, the people who really think a lot of you, they reference you as both a cheerleader and a counselor.
Mm.
So two-part question.
Mm-hmm.
You ever actually been a cheerleader, like more on the non-work side of life? And
Uh-huh.
two, why do people feel that way through your process, like the cheerleader and counselor concept?
Yeah. Huh, that's a fun question. So, I think by nature I'm an encourager, and I think that's a gift that I have. And then I am an eternal optimist. I think that we can make change. That's probably, lends itself toward the name of Pivot X. Like, we can make change again and again and again, and we can keep finding our way into, winning the game. Um, and so I believe that for myself, and I believe that for other people. So maybe that's part of the cheerleader thing. Yeah, I was a cheerleader in ninth grade.
You were
Uh,
too. Okay,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
gotcha.
Um, but also I think counselor, that speaks to just my nature, probably, that I've always had, and maybe why I've ended up in this line of work. Um, so dating back to, if I take you back to those
Mhm.
cheerleader days, we also had these things called peer helpers, and they were like mini counselors in the junior high. And so that was my first, I would say, like, segue into human behavior and just wanting to help, be a helper in that capacity. And then I really fell in love with psychology, and I really fell in love with human behavior in high school. And then, I'm also pretty analytical. And so then I went down the business route and studied business in college, and then decided, no, it's like, it's not necessarily the marketing lane that I want to be. It's the human behavior lane that digs into that. So then I finished my degree in psychology and like did full circle. So my career has been a mix of analytical processes and also the deeply human, empathetic processes in building teams and in leading businesses and all things along the journey.
So let's put ourselves now back in the, strategic planning, leadership development, facilitation environment.
Hmm.
You get that feedback that Heather is a cheerleader and a counselor, and that feels really good. How does that show up in that meeting? Like you're analyzing data, you're developing thoughts. Like
Yeah.
how do you make that actionable for people? I'm just curious about, I mean, without your giving your Pivot X secret sauce away, like how do you work through that process for folks?
Yeah. The cheerleader honestly probably takes a back seat.
Mhm.
I think that the true thing that comes out is the ability to leave self. Like, I someone taught me along my journey about, taking perspective and moving out of my own kind of myopic view and into the passenger seat of what someone else is going through. And I think I'm wired to be empathetic in that way, but I think it was an exercise and a training to be able to do that. So, whenever my secret sauce when I'm in the room in facilitation is to, like, when I'm thinking through strategic planning, is listening for the insight, pulling from, maybe it's the body language, maybe it's, the eye contact shifts, maybe it's the, like, partial starts but not full starts. What is somebody not getting to that needs to be discussed in the room? Or what is that little thing that somebody mentioned over here that really needs to be pulled back into the larger strategy? And, I think also I'm more of a broad strategic thinker. And so, where are we diving too much into the detail and we need to pull it back into the big plan, or vice versa? So I think it's just kind of knowing for me, again, maybe when to pivot and when to kind of go big and small and go here and there and making sure that all the right data is on the board as we make a plan for moving forward.
So when you're moving into, we're now in that meeting. Let's walk back. Do you find most organizations, or maybe not most, like what percentage of organizations would you say they know what the problem is, where the strategic planning needs to kind of wrap around and direct? Like, or is there a certain percentage, like the inverse of that would be, we have no idea, we're just not getting where we want to go. Like we wrote a goal up this year or a 3-year goal or a 5-year goal, whatever it is, and we're not on track and we can't really, we're dumbfounded as to why, like, and we need some guidance around that. Are people real intentional, like know what the issue is and they need the guidance, or are they just respectfully clueless?
I think it can go in all directions. There are rooms where I come into that are like startup, very fresh, and they have a concept and they have a goal, but they don't have anything else in between of how we're going to get there and what we need and who we need and when we need it. So that part's very fresh and we get to start from scratch. There are others that have a very clear idea of where they're going, and the issue is alignment. So how do we get everybody in the room? Maybe we're a more mature company and we have a bigger team and we've really thought through strategy, but we're having issues bringing everybody on board. Then it's about, facilitation of those conversations to make sure that everybody's bought in so that we can disseminate that down and down and down throughout the organization. So sometimes it's not like necessarily about like the X's and O's. Right. It's just getting everybody bought in.
We've identified something is off track. There has to be some impetus for the for the planning, for the strategy, but it sounds like it can expand into all sorts of different directions. It's basically it's like, hey, it started with this. We're not executing upon this particular piece of the business very effectively, and you find it's a byproduct of X, Y, and Z, which could span the entire organization. And I said, so okay, all right. So we're going to step back even further.
Okay.
So like, you started a business.
Yeah.
Why did you want to do that? Like, why on earth would you want to start?
Oh, really stepping back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gosh, I have realized that I am just a pretty independent person by nature, and I love doing things on my own. I love proving it to myself, love a good challenge. I've really had some exercises in bravery and courage the last few years, some out of necessity and some by choice, but it just feels good. Like for me, I think it's a little bit of an adrenaline rush, and that the creation of something gives me so much energy. And so as I was thinking through, whenever I worked for great companies along my way, what I loved most was building something, creating the idea, then creating the process, then bringing the people on and bringing it all to life and watching it go. Like that was so much fun. And creating leaders along the way. And so whenever I was in my last position, I was putting all that together, is that it wasn't the subject matter. I worked in a few different industries and a few different subject matters. It wasn't really that I was passionate about. It was the build and the development of others. And so, I was like, how can I just do that? And, some people can just do that and join an organization and become that by, and I was like, I think I just want to do that and build it myself.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, and it's exciting. Yeah, there are, without a doubt, different avenues to do and create and build. But now you've kind of had experiences in both worlds. You've done it in your own organization. You've done it for others. I imagine that brings a lot more perspective on the different vehicles to do it. So you're in Walmart country.
Yes.
So born and raised there?
Born and raised here. Yeah. So my family goes back 4 or 5 generations on both sides. I wonder if I got that number wrong, but it's a lot. And maybe we have some in Missouri, actually. I think my dad has some in Missouri. Anyway, doesn't matter. I was born in Rogers. And then moved, 15 minutes to Bentonville, and then went to school at the University of Arkansas, and then left for 2 years and went to Boston. So did did the East Coast journey, and that was so awesome. But really just wanted to come back home. There are so many things I love about this place. The rolling hills and the beautiful trees. I mean, everything is so green right now, and I missed the green when I was in Boston. I missed that so much. So, yeah. So I think, the heartland is kind of where I'll always reside, right around here.
Ozark country. So
Yeah.
Boston folks, when you said you were from Arkansas, what did they think Arkansas was?
Sweet.
Oh, they thought it
No,
was
I'm
sweet?
kidding. No, I don't know. I can't read their minds and I can't put words in their mouths, but I do know that I used to get teased for little phrases that I would use, like, just little colloquialisms that I didn't think anything of. And then I sat up there and they're like, what? So, yeah. But Boston people are great. There are, everybody's moving fast and it's a pretty transient kind of place. You kind of stop in and then you go somewhere else. But in that workplace, I met some of the most endearing people who were very welcoming and, made some really great friends that I still keep in touch with now.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm drawing on my experience when I kind of went out west for about a 4-year period, like San Francisco, Seattle.
Yeah.
Everybody thought that people in Missouri, rode on like tractors to get to work. Like that, we were all like, no, there's a couple big cities. We do have some highways and the occasional mall and things like that. But no, I've had the opportunity to spend some time now in Arkansas, and it's gorgeous. It's gorgeous country. I think everybody should find an opportunity to get down there.
Yeah, most of us wear shoes.
Most. That's like anywhere else. Today's the last day of school here, and my 15-year-old walked out. I think she thought maybe shoes were in the car. At least that's what I'm hoping. Like she walked out the door to go to school with no shoes on. I'm like,
no.
Yeah.
They were in the car. They had to be in the car.
What it turned out is one of them was. One was not. 'Cause she came back in. Well, so this has been really great. I mean, it's been, like I said, we've known you for a long time. I've always been thoroughly impressed with what you've done and just really just how you help organizations. And, now we've had some recent experience with some of these assessments and things that we're doing together with you that got to go through it firsthand. So it's really great. Like my question is, why haven't you had a podcast? Like, why haven't you talked about these things on your own?
Oh, man. Do you know? I don't know if I've told you this. I have.
Breaking news.
Yeah, well, I haven't done anything with it, but I really did think about starting a podcast. I, kind of thought about what the name would be, what the stories would be, and I got the name, and I haven't done it yet, but I love it. I love having conversations with people and learning about what's working for them and learning about where their pain points are and, the pivots that they've taken along the journey. So, yeah, I'm into it.
That's good. Yeah. I encourage anybody. It's like, you should do it. It's fun. For all the reasons you just described. But, yeah, it's a lot of fun. You get to learn people's stories, learn about what they do. I mean, I think people think I'm a lunatic. Like when I do go to the gym, like I don't listen to music. I listen to podcasts.
Oh, me too.
It's better. It's better. The embarrassing part is when like you're listening to a funny one. There's a couple that I listen to, like like Smartless and the Lonely Island Boys podcast, and I'll like bust out laughing in the middle of like working out, and then you look like a lunatic. But
it's okay.
But crazy idea, not so crazy actually. Let me sell this to you. I think if you had podcast aspirations, come do this one. You should just come join and be a part of this one. It would be really wonderful for 2 reasons. This is the pitch.
I love
it. Our listeners would be happy because I am terrible at this. Like the hosting part, like the coordination, the prep. I will show you like this is my prep for this.
Is that a blank note card?
No, it's written on here. It says cheerleader.
It says prep for Heather.
It says cheerleader counselor. That's what I wrote down. So I think our fans would enjoy having little more professionalism around how these things actually get run. But two, it just what you do, the way you think about people, the intersection of how that works with like where you're coming from, what we talk about at PEOMG, and really what we talk about on PEO Speedwagon, which I'm thankful to have a non-PEO driven conversation here. I think people would really, really enjoy. So I think you should stay. Like just stay in the Zoom. Don't get out.
Yeah. Man, I'm flattered. I'll be here. You go get some coffee, some food, some sleep, come back tomorrow. I'll still be here.
That's
So
right. Yeah.
I'm in.
Awesome. It's a deal.
It's a
Perfect.
deal.
I'm thrilled. And so I can instantly tell you our fans and you know, I'm sure Liquid Death has only not sponsored just because of me. So now maybe we'll make the deal. So
I love it.
well, Heather, I'm so glad to have you here. Glad that you're going to stay. Glad that you're going to be a part of this. I'm going to hold you to it. And
Okay.
this has been this has been a monumental episode of the PEO Speedwagon. So thank you so much for being on.
Thanks for having me. It's been a joy.